Welcome back to Mindkind Podcasts. This is Dr. Jo North returning to our platform. Mindkind continues to be a reflective space for anyone who wants to stay sane in our demanding world. Our intention is to inspire, motivate and inform people of all ages interested in mental health and well-being. I'll be drawing on 35 years of practice as a psychotherapist, and we'll be looking at research and therapy along the way and talking with other experts in the field so we can draw on their skill. Nothing in this podcast is intended to cause you shock or surprise. If you think a subject is going to cause any triggering to any conditions that you have, please don't listen and just choose another podcast of interest. If you happen to be in a podcast and something in there triggers some kind of anxiety or stress for you, please switch off straight away and contact your mental health professional. If something affects the mind, we'll be talking about it. So let's get on with today's podcast. Hello. Today on Mindkind Podcasts, I've managed to get Sara Riley back, Dr. Sara Riley. And you may recall that Sara and I talked previously about her work with couples therapy. Sara is a retired medical practitioner and she works in the field now of couples therapy. And she does amazing work and has helped us think about what it means to be in relationship. But today I wanted to talk to Sara about my work on eating and mental health, and particularly about time-related eating. So we got her back and she's going to be interviewing me about the subject. And as you may be aware, I've got a book coming out in September and I'm going to be setting up the Foodsane website, and I'm really excited about that work. And this is Sara and I talking about it together. Sara is coming at it from her position in the world of medical practice, and I'm coming at it from the position of my practice as a psychotherapist. And we both are time-related eaters. We both are very keen on eating within a time-restricted window, not to make ourselves feel miserable or not to restrict ourselves, but to lead really healthy lives. And we both feel really well on that. But we wanted to talk to you more about it. So I'm so pleased to have her with us.
So it's so good to have Sara Riley back with us today. And we're turning the tables. She is going to interview me today. And she's going to interview me on my thoughts and my experiences about my new book, Foodsane, which is going to be out in September. And Sara's very interested in this whole world of food sanity as a former doctor and someone involved in helping people. So over to you, Sara. I'm at your mercy.
Thanks, Jo, for that introduction. Yes, well, you and I have known each other for several years now, and you've always been interested in food and how the mind and body food system works, and that has sparked my increased interest about this too. So I suppose starting right from the beginning, which we haven't really covered in our few years of knowing each other, where did this interest come from? What's the root of it all for you?
Well, it's twofold. So one is that I've always had a weight problem that I have battled with and struggled with quietly in the background of my life, in the wallpaper of my life. And I allowed myself to notice exactly the impact of that on me psychologically and emotionally and in terms of every aspect of my life. But I have always turned that into my professional work too. And I've worked a lot with people who have eating challenges and eating difficulties. And I'm very invested, possibly motivated for my own pain in that, as healers often are, but also in helping people today with weight management and knowing that there's a lot of suffering under the surface on all of that. I'm interested in that. And I'm not just interested in suffering, I'm interested in how we find solutions to that. So I made an exploration on many levels, on a personal level and on a research level, and looking at the world and what's going on right now. So that's what put me here.
Yes. So with that, thank you for sharing that. So with that bit of background, where has that got you sort of at this point in your life? Because I know you and I have been talking about where you are now, having found a system that works for you.
I'm very engaged in time-related eating at the present time. I've done research on it and a lot of experiencing of it, and I actually think it's quite solid ground to be standing on in the current food environment in which we live. In that it's very, very constructive, it's very positive. You can't fail at time-related eating. You can start in a very easy way. It's all very doable and it's all very workable. And I think the problem with highly restricted diets is A, that people put on weight. It's well documented that weight goes on in most cases. If you start restricting and start messing around with your natural metabolic system, but also the terrible inconvenience of restricted diets. So, for example, intermittent fasting. Well, I just can't do it. I can't sustain that as a way of eating. And I don't see many people who do. But with time-related eating, it's a life of eating that's sustainable. And that's what I'm interested in. That's just like, let's not make this worse.
No, I mean, there's lots of questions that are coming to me from what you just said. I suppose one of the two, or one of the main questions is about the two words that you've used that you and I have talked about before, this word fasting and restricted. I mean, automatically for me, that triggers thinking about, old-fashioned diets and yo-yoing and those sort of things. So the term time-related eating feels very different from that. I don't know whether you wanted to comment on that particularly.
Yeah, food is meant to do two things. It's meant to sustain us and keep us alive. And that's really important. And it's meant to also reward us because food is a social and it's a rewarding experience. And there are times in our lives when we want to cut back a bit, quite naturally. And as I say in Foodsane, there are many faiths and religions throughout the world who use cutting back as a way to be at peace with oneself, to find their relationship with God, to find their relationship with themselves. And so it's nothing new about cutting back. At the same time, there's nothing new about feasting. Feasting's an amazing thing. I love to feast. I think that with time-related eating, you do both. And therefore, you allow both aspects of your brain, both purposes to exist. So in time-related eating, you can have your eating time and you can enjoy it, but you can have your cutting back time, let the body rest and digest and be at peace with that. And if I can help people learn both of those aspects of the mind and body, then that's really, really helpful. And in my book, I call it stop, start. Fasting is such a hard word, isn't it? It makes me feel hungry straight away. It makes me want to get a pile of sandwiches in me immediately as soon as I hear that. But if we're just sort of managing time, it's quite a different thing. And restricted calorie diets have been very, very much sold to men and women for the last 70 years. And I think there's a lot of scientific evidence. And I'm not a scientist in this field, but there's plenty of reading out there for people that want to do it, which is embodied really in the work with Jason Fung in his obesity code, when he talks about there's actually not a lot of evidence to show that the calories in and the calories out model, in, out, is actually productive on a long-term basis. Yeah. So that's really helpful. And I think that, women of my era, your era, and younger women today, why am I saying women? This is about men and women and everybody, and transgender people as well, about us all. Immediately it will happen. You go, oh no, I'm just not feeling good about my body, so I'll restrict and I'll cut back, and that never will last for long. We're not made to do that.
No, you've just mentioned briefly about the psychological experiences that people have when they eat in a slightly different way, particularly if they eat within a certain window. And I think for me and for, I think a lot of people now, we're understanding so much more about the mind-body connection, because it's not just about connecting with our bit of our body that tells us when we want to eat or when we want to stop. We have mind-body connections now to help us manage our anxiety, to help us sleep with deep breathing, to let us know we need to be in a good state if you're going to train a lot for something particular. So the mind-body thing is crucial to this, but also it's not just about eating, is it? It's not just about eating and food.
No, it's about, in a way, it's about a joined up life. Food is terribly important. And the way that we eat is important, but there is so much, just as there's so much more to human beings than their weight.
Yes.
There is so much more to life than food. I mean, we eat to survive, really. And I think sort of that part of my journey pulled me into thinking about circadian rhythms and the lovely work of Sechin Panda, who wrote about the circadian code. And we're thinking about that in psychology now. We're thinking about the natural rhythm of life, the way the sun runs us, the way the moon runs us, the way that daylight runs us, and very, very simple ways that we can think about, say when we change the clocks and the impact that might have on us mentally, is so vital to our well-being. What I aim for now is to help people understand they have got a circadian rhythm. They've got a whole bunch of clocks inside them that are trying to tick-tock together in synchrony. And that's much more important than anything. And I think that we really stand very big chance in this world of getting all that lining up really out of sync. And so as you say, it's more than just what you put in your mouth. It's how you align yourself and feel energized and live a life that's possible.
So hearing that, I suppose the next natural question is, so how has your experience for time-related eating affected you, both mind and body? That's the connection bit. How does it work well for you? Because again, we have to say, it might not necessarily work for everyone, but how does it work well for you?
It works well for me in terms of I'm very energized. And I'm the right weight for me now, which in my life has been always a very difficult thing. And it's not a difficult thing to keep a balanced, great weight for me now. It's great, isn't it? Let's face it, my clothes fit me. That's a win.
As somebody said, you don't have half the wardrobe that you avoid when you.
No, absolutely not. No, I don't avoid the wardrobe. No. And mentally, I feel incredibly alert. And that's a win. I feel highly engaged with life through intermittent fasting. I mean, there's some aspects of, I use the word fasting, but there's some aspects of time-related eating a little bit inconvenient because I've got a circadian rhythm that sort of says, well, I'll eat at 11 and I'm really closing down by 4 o'clock. And I've got some lovely friends who say, come and eat with us at 8 o'clock at night. And well, I'll always stretch to do that, but of course I will. But I've had to adapt. I've had to find ways to say to people, oh, I'm kind of eating in this time frame. I go on lunch dates, not dinner dates. And I've had to be more assertive. And I thought I was pretty assertive anyway. And I'm just generally more on top of my life, I would say, because every bit of me is firing on the right cylinder. And I'm sure that you will have a very beautiful biological way of understanding that, Sarah. I mean, I'm not a medic and I don't come at this from that position. And I know that medics today, are thinking very carefully about this whole picture and about compassion towards obesity. But I suppose I could safely say, I feel like all my cylinders are firing. Everything's lined up.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think weight management is becoming much more talked about in a more supportive way, a very holistic approach to it, certainly from a medical perspective, in my experience, to help people find a healthy weight for them. And as you and I have talked before, it's got to be healthy from a body point of view. It's got to be healthy from a mind point of view.
Exactly.
Within that range, which is the only thing at the moment to think about what a healthy weight would look like for people and the benefits of that.
Yes. Do you think there's a lot of shift in the way we're thinking about? I mean, we used to, you and I were discussing, we don't like the word obesity now. It kind of stigmatizes people. We're thinking about different language to use, and I think that implies that there's a whole different view of weight management now.
There's much more understanding of why people struggle to manage their weight than they ever used to be. And so some of those are going to be able to be addressed in new medications and new other support systems that can help people take back control, which is what we're talking about, because the feeling aligned that you've talked about means that there's a sense of control for you in this particular way of eating. And I suppose it's quite interesting to think about if the mind can do that, if the body-mind axis can support that, what are the areas where the mind is less helpful with respect to, as we're talking about eating habits and weight management? How can the mind sabotage that?
Well, I think that's a great question because, as you know, I've got very engaged in the body mind and how being in touch with the body helps us much, much more. And our brains are very habitual. Yeah, I don't know about you, but, I write extensively in Foodsane about my sugar addiction. I mean, even now, one big sugary cake and I'm in. I am back in because my brain says, I love that so much, So really, we're talking about habits. And it takes a lot longer to put a new habit into our system, into our neurological pathways, than it does to get rid of those old ones. Yeah. And so addiction to foods now is a very big problem. And that's about our brains and our brains saying, this is great for me. And we get ensnared there and caught there and it becomes very painful. I mean, that's very obvious in things like alcohol and sugar and ultra processed foods that are incredibly addictive. I don't know if you find it, but a fatty, sugary experience makes me go, yeah, I'll be back for more of that. And so it's that I have found that time-related eating helps me step back and get some distance from food. And, I'm talking about an increased relationship with the body, but I'm talking about an increased relationship with your mind as well. And so one of the things I talk about is, how to just distance yourself and feel comfortable with that. Not like you're having to talk to yourself, but like you feel good because you're just saying no right now.
That you absolutely know you don't want whatever it is that in the past you might have wanted.
Well, exactly, because the thing is this, and it's a big thing in changing behavior, is you want the thing that feels better. And the thing that feels better in the end is space from food, because addiction doesn't feel great. Ask any addict, they'll tell you. And so in the end, you get into your mind, you want the thing that feels better. You want that more than the cake. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think we're getting much better at that. And I talk about making time-related eating an attractive thing. So, now I really set my time-related eating is full of good things. So when I'm not eating, it's full of nice, drinks of water or nice black coffees or teas or whatever, and resting and, full of reward that I used to just, a bit of food was so easy,
Yeah. Sorry, and I suppose the other thing is that you use alcohol as another example. When weight management becomes a real challenge, then people get physiological, so chemical changes in the body that reinforce it. So you get metabolic syndrome, which means it turns the insulin response not quite how it should be. And that in itself is another kind of stimulant of wanting to eat. So I think that's such a good example of the mind and body bit not being helpful. So it's to break that cycle.
Yeah, that automatic response.
Body's doing it physically, which we can't control because it's responding to the food, but then your mind can support the body and then the body can then support the mind as well. So it is an interaction like that.
Well, I think that what you're talking about there is the way biology responds as well. That insulin response is like, we don't do anything about that. It just happens, doesn't it? And I think you were talking earlier about insulin resistance and the way that occurs. And then just actually literally goes out of control in your system. And I think that time-related eating is a pathway to say, let's just make you feel good about controlling this.
Yes.
And I think when you're lost in that automatic behavior and addiction, it's really hard to believe you could feel good about saying no.
And so do you think, I think I know the answer because obviously we've been out and had meals together while you're doing the time-related eating, but it sounds as though the emotion of guilt, which is always quite part of weight management, is much less of a much less of a problem. Certainly speaking to you about the concept of guilt, as you know, if you've got to open your window, or you know you can have Christmas when you can eat what you like, because then you know you've got this way of quite safely and comfortably getting yourself to where you feel back on track.
Absolutely. I mean, guilt and shame around food and weight are going to be the things that actually just get in the way. And that horrible experience of, oh, if you've eaten the wrong food, then you're going to feel bad for 2 days afterwards. But I think with time-related eating, you take the focus off the food. You just say, I'm going to find a suitable eating time for me. And I'm going to feel my way into that, because we are feeling beings, we feel things, we're going to feel how that is for my body. I'm going to feel if I can sustain that. And when I got to that first stop of a nice, easy time frame, which is nothing, I say to people, don't obsess over feeling bad, forgive yourself, you've done nothing wrong, you've got in this trap, and set your time frame and see what you can do and see if you can get comfortable in there. And then when you've got in there, then let's take a look at where you want to go from there. And what we really talk about is tiny steps forward. I used to eat very small amounts of food, Sarah, and I was always utterly confounded when I put on weight. And I know there'll be a lot of people listening who've had that experience. I actually eat quite a lot of food now, but it's all within a window. And I love the story. I think it was Sechin Panda who talked about the experiment with mice, where they separated 2 lots of mice from each other, and 30 mice got like the equivalent of mice fast food, like every day, and they got to eat all day, anytime, all day, lovely. And then the other lot of mice had mice fast food, but they only had it for 8 hours a day, and then it was taken away. So they ate the same amount of food, the same amount of calories, mice calories, all the same, just one had a restricted window. And at the end of 3 months, the mice that ate endlessly at any time had put on weight, they were heading towards lots of illness, their immunity was not in good shape, and they were looking in a pretty poor state. And the other mice were absolutely fine, and they had not put on weight, and they were absolutely healthy. And they were so surprised by the results that test has been repeated and repeated, because they thought maybe that's a fluke. But it comes out every time. But you can have those if you just put them in a window. And what you're doing is giving the body time to recover, and giving the body time, put it simply in non-medical terms, rest and digest. Jason Fung talks about, everybody goes home and the office cleaners come in. The cleaners come into the office and clean up when you've stopped eating. But you have to stop. You can't keep throwing rubbish on the floor. Those sorts of analogies are really, really helpful.
It also stops the body storing food, which is the whole insulin response. If it's got lots of food, it just says, I don't know where my next meal's coming from, I'll just store that. So that's what it's meant to do. So it keeps on storing and storing and storing. Whereas if we give it a break, it has to either use up stores it's got, or it just doesn't bother to say, I need to store, because there's nothing coming into it to store. So there's a kind of physiological bit behind that as well.
Well, that's, of course, very helpful. I think you call that insulin resistance, is it? You just keep storing and storing, because insulin is the storage it's the refrigerator hormone.
Yes, it's the hormone that tells the body you need to do this, because you don't know, because psychologically, obviously, when we were running around eating from the earth and boars and killing all animals to eat, we had to go out hunting. We didn't know when the next food would come. So we have to store it.
Yeah, sure we did. Yeah. And our bodies work on that sort of primitive level all the time. And I think that's why that sugar addiction, I understood that sugar addiction is, of course, at a primitive level, the brain says, this is a really good idea because I've got loads of energy. Brains love sugar. No wonder we are in a little bit of a problem there. And as you say, our brains get in the way.
So, yes, we've talked about a bit what brought your interest around and a bit of the mind-body connection here. So if somebody was thinking about inquiring more about time-related eating, or trying it, as we said at the beginning, as long as they're fit and healthy. But if they have any concerns, they get a medical opinion. But if they wanted to give it a go, how would you suggest they start?
Well, I would suggest start, I was saying the other day, if you're going to go into the sea and you're a little bit unsure of the sea, then you don't just dive in off a yacht out in 20 feet, do you? Well, not many of us go on yachts anyway, Sarah.
No.
You don't just dive in, you paddle in, you go from the ankles. So take the Zoe people, Tim Spector and his team did a super duper huge study of about 35,000 people, asked them to engage in a study of time-related eating. And I think they put them on 14-10 so they could rest for 14. Yeah. Which is very doable. It's very doable, but I would say there'll be some people where that's a little bit uncomfortable. So don't start 14-10. Start 12-12 and you experiment with you and you feel what's right. Start there. That's brilliant. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But on that 14-10 study, which I don't think they've got all the results in, but on the whole, people reported very positive outcomes. There was a little bit of weight loss for people, not a lot, that's a very comfortable eating pattern. There's a little bit of weight loss, but people felt brighter and they felt happier, they felt more in control, they felt more emotionally stable, they felt that they could manage food. And so these were all brilliant outcomes. And they didn't do that for very long. And a lot of them said that they would continue to do that. So that was a sort of fairly easy study, And I'm sure in due course there'll be a lot more studies. I think 14-10 is a beautifully comfortable place, but I think 12-12 is also very comfortable. And I think I was telling you earlier, Sarah, about David, my husband, who's watched me on my time-related eating. And I'm kind of have a very busy life, very active, and so my windows are quite tight, except that I change those at weekends. I have quite a broad window. And my body says, yeah, that's just right for me. Okay, so you're busy, mentally, emotionally, I don't really want to be digesting loads of foods, but weekends I am in a broader window and I love that. I feel really good on that. David doesn't need to diet. He's never in his whole life had a weight problem. I think in 30 years of marriage, I don't think he's ever put on any weight. He's one of those people.
Yeah.
And he's also beautifully understanding that I'm the opposite kind of person. I'm not like that. But we thought we'd just try and extend a window so that he's basically eating in a 14-10 pattern. And all that meant was cutting out the last cup of tea at night and any biscuits or snacks he might have. And it wasn't hard for him. It was really relaxed. And, he looks so good and he's very resilient. He's 78. Everyone says how sprightly he looks. And he's also moving into being a little bit more choosy about what he eats, and naturally you start to get more in touch with your body, which is unheard of for my beloved husband. He used to have a drink every night, only one, doesn't even have that now, doesn't even want it. How's that?
That's amazing, isn't it? How he's managed to move, as you say, one step at a time into a different place. I also think it can be helpful to explain when you mean 14-10, what that basically means is if you stop eating by 7 and don't eat again till 9, that's your 14.
Yeah.
And most people, 14 hours seems quite a long time. I can't eat for 14 hours, but in fact, you're asleep for most of that time. That's the joy of that sort of, if I can stop at 7, which is not unreasonable for some days of the week. And then if I get up at 7 and I don't eat till 9, that's your 14.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is to sit down and really get this right for yourself. And I always say to people, start where you love to eat. Everyone has a hungry time of the day, don't they? Mine was always 11 o'clock, even as a kid. I had a crazy hungry thing at 11 o'clock and a crazy hungry thing at 4 o'clock. So if you know that about yourself, then start there. And in fact, my natural window is 11 till 4. That is a lovely, lovely window for me. So some people, they wake up, they want their breakfast. So, okay, do that then. And then see when you can end at the end of the day and see how that works. It's all got to be doable and it's all got to be sustainable. And
very individual.
Totally, absolutely. We are so unique. Just to say on windows, over Christmas, we were staying with lovely friends and I did 12-hour windows, right? And I loved it. My body said, yeah, I'm loving this. And my brain was saying, yeah, this is great. But after 3 days, I was saying, please make it stop now. Please stop. I absolutely can't. Don't do this. And it wasn't like I didn't think I needed to diet. I just thought
you've had enough.
Yeah, I need my stop now. Yeah.
You need a breather. Yeah. Everything in our body needs a breather from time to time, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the body will take its breathing. I think, if we carry on overeating, we don't stop, then the body probably, our immunity gets a little bit low. We might get ill. All sorts of things happen, That's the other thing. My immunity is really good at the moment on this, but I'm not a medic, so I couldn't make that link. But I think there probably will be studies to show that link.
Jo, it's been really interesting to talk to you. I've learnt loads.
Yeah. Do you think you'd do time-related eating? I don't, Sarah, what do you think?
Yes, I think what's very interesting is the more I think about it and the more I realise I probably do on one level. Sometimes I'll wake up and I think, actually, I'm not really hungry at all. And then suddenly, want to eat at 1:30. But I do think in those days, actually only the other day I woke up, am I hungry or not? If I'm not sure, then I will try and think, actually, I won't eat now till 2. But it's the choice, it's the individuality. It is being much more aware of, people what do they call it? The meat coma. When you have a lot of protein, how after Christmas lunch, people get very sleepy because they've had a lot of protein, a lot of calories, and experience it when it feels just right. What a gift to be able to get it just right. Sometimes, not all the time by any means.
No.
And having the choice, we like to have choices and we feel empowered when we have choices. So I think this way feels as though it has the potential to give people that choices and options and flexibility.
Yeah, and freedom. Incredible freedom, isn't it? It's a very interesting thing that it is a discipline and it brings enormous freedom, but it is not a restrictive, unkind discipline. It is a discipline that is really based on really valuing yourself and treating yourself well. I could go on all day, Sarah. So thank you so much. I think one of the things we were both very keen on, and just to end on the note of saying time-related eating is a super way forward. And I know that for some people, weight is very painful and difficult, and they are going to move to medication, weight loss medication. And I know we were both very keen to say, do that under medical supervision. Be very, very careful. I have no issue with people that need to take that step because I know how tough it is. But make sure you're supervised, make sure you keep safe, because it's a very big impact on the mind and body, that one. And I'm really happy to be working with people who are on medication to help them make that connection too. It's the same thing, it's the same rules. In the end, it ends up the same. We all need to end up taking really good care of ourselves. So, yeah.
I'm getting to where we want to be, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Jo. Delight, as always.
Always.
Thank you for listening. Check out the next episode on our platform. Don't forget, I'm a doctor of psychotherapy, not medicine or clinical psychology. My expertise lies in the field of applied psychology through psychotherapeutic models of practice. This podcast is not intended for diagnosis or treatment of any kind. If you are concerned about your mental health, do consult your doctor, who will guide you. If you are ever in a mental health crisis within the UK, dial 999. In all other parts of the world, check your mental health facilities or turn to someone who will support you.